they're twisting all of it around, right? What's black is white, what's up is down, what's left is right. Everything is getting messed up, and I think we've seen a lot of that in the last 5 years. A lot of misinformation that they print as fact. Well, we still see it. I mean, Joe and I had an interview recently. We discussed that too. The Western media is constantly pumping negatives about Russia. When you come over here and you realize how lovely these people are.
Is there anything that you could change, for example? Any kind of policies that you would implement if you had the power or the authority to do so in Canada that could possibly change things for the better?
Does that include removing leadership?
Speak freely.
I think Trudeau would have to go. That would be number one. Him and his whole policies for sure. The liberal-minded policies have done a lot of damage.
Hi everyone, my name is Stan and welcome to A Russian Opinion. Today we have Arend. Arend is from Canada and he and his family moved to live in Russia, and today he's going to be telling us his story for the channel. Anyways, Arend, thank you very much. Welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me, Stan.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family if you want to.
Well, I got a lovely wife, Anissa. I have 9 children. 8 of them are here with us in Russia. The oldest one probably will come once we establish something, but right now he's still in Canada.
Okay. All right. So where in Canada, though? Where did you live? Where were you born?
Born in the Netherlands, actually. So I
okay.
moved to Canada as a child, yeah. I've done the immigration thing. I was 4 years old when we came to Canada. And in Canada, we've moved multiple times. I met my wife in Ontario. That's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And then together we spent time in southern Alberta, northern Ontario, Saskatchewan, and then just recently we came from Ontario again.
Okay, so not in anywhere in BC, not in Quebec, nothing out east,
Nope.
mainly prairies, Alberta, and Ontario. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Which out of all of those places, which do you actually would prefer? If you were to live in Canada, what would you choose?
Oh, tough one. The last place we lived, I really, really, really liked it. It was a mix of, Ontario's got more prosperity and economics, but Western Canada definitely has our heart. And Manitoulin Island is in Ontario, and it's kind of got a balance of the two. Mm-hmm. So we really, if I moved back, I would move back there again.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, Ontario's also, I assume it's more expensive than Central or Western Canada. Well, actually, that's considered Central. I would say the prairies in Western Canada, not including BC. I'd assume Ontario is the most expensive place to live, no?
Yes, definitely southern Ontario. I mean, land prices in southern Ontario are very unaffordable. You can't find a house for under $400,000 or $500,000 anymore. So, but you go to northern Ontario, you can still buy one for. Well, I just picked one up in the spring that it needed a lot of work, but we bought it for under $50,000. So
that's extremely cheap for the Canadian market.
Yeah.
But I've heard that the issue is that they're not building enough houses to sustain the goal of bringing immigrants in to further sustain the GDP, to expand the GDP. The strategy of Trudeau is bringing immigrants in, but to have that strategy actually work, you need the housing. And I heard that the houses are not being built at the same pace, not nearly the same pace as needed. Is that true or no?
Well, I'm not an expert on the matter. I know they're bringing in a lot of immigrants, between 500,000 and 1 million immigrants per year, and there's definitely a housing shortage. Affordable housing shortage. I think I've been told anyway, there's lots of empty houses that are just too expensive for anyone to buy. But there is an issue right now, not enough laborers around. All right, with the shrinking population or shrinking family sizes, there's not enough laborers around there to build the houses anymore.
The American dream and the Canadian dream are quite similar, in my opinion. But in your opinion, have you achieved the Canadian dream? Did you live a good life while you were in Canada?
Yep, I would say so. We started with nothing when we got married. We everything would have fit in the back of a pickup truck easy. We worked hard, a lot of hours, and yeah, we had a nice place. We didn't move for ourselves. I mean, economically, we were sitting good. We were in good shape. But with 9 children and a view to their future, I didn't see that same success possibility for them as we had.
How come? I mean, I know we're going to be further delving into these questions a little bit later, but at least if you can touch upon it, why do you believe that your children will not have the same opportunities for a successful future that, for example, you had growing up?
Well, it's not impossible. It's just the prices are a lot higher now. The profit margins are getting smaller all the time in agriculture. Maybe it depends on which sector you're in. We try to focus on niche markets where we're marketing directly to consumers, so there is a higher profit margin there. But classic farming, the traditional way of farming, there's hardly any profit left in it, right? So we also had a hand up here and there from people, or a hand up is the wrong word. We had one deal where an older couple had no one to take over their farm, and they helped us to get started. And I think that was crucial in kind of propelling us forward as well. I wouldn't say it's impossible for them, but I think it is a lot harder for the generations now. If you look at the difference between the wages, how fast they're climbing versus how fast cost of living and cost of housing is increasing, they're not climbing on the same scale. You could try to save for a house, that used to be possible. Grandpa could save for a down payment on a house. That was a possibility. Today, I don't think you could save fast enough for the rate that the house prices are climbing.
Okay, but it can't just be a monetary issue. There's a lot of changes happening all over the world, not just in Russia, but Canada and U.S. In my opinion, there's a lot of changes happening in the Western world that are for the worse, and there's a lot of changes happening at this moment for the time being. Not all of them, but at the time being in Russia, for example. If you take out the monetary issues that a lot of people are having globally, are there any particular reasons why you believe your children wouldn't have the same type of future or opportunity for the same future that you did, if you just remove the money aspect out of it?
Well, you got the whole woke movement where a traditional male is seen now as toxic in the West in many circumstances. So I think it is maybe not so much in agriculture. I don't think that applies for agriculture, but in many jobs, it would be a hindrance as far as getting a good career, because they're predominantly trying to pick people from different backgrounds, colored background. That's the wrong word. Can't even think of the right word here.
It happens.
Yeah. Anyway, people from other countries, other nationalities, minorities, that's the word. They're trying to pick people from minorities and women for a lot of the job cycles that are not now less available maybe for men. Economic, I don't know. I think I don't like to go down that road. I like to say that life is what you make it, and if you're willing to put the effort into it, you can still have that dream. I just know that it is more difficult now than it was. I think somebody saving for 5 years, 20 years ago could have had a nice down payment on a house. And today it's very impossible. Or not impossible, it's very difficult to do.
Well, you're also in that, you're in the worst category possible, because you're from what I can see, you're an alpha type white male who's a farmer as well. So you've got the woke people after you, you've got the vegans after you, you've got the LGBT community after you. You literally have everyone after you, except for people living in Alberta who are going, yeah, that's the type of person that we're looking for. This is how we are, and we cherish family values. In terms of family values, though, Canada has changed quite dramatically. It is my personal belief that society is kept strongly together, united by strong family values. Now the wokeist movement is pushing something else entirely. Everyone can be what they want to be. They don't need to have a nuclear type family. They can just have 3 people. They can have genderless kids, etc., etc. I know that Canada, for one reason or another, wants to be the champion of that. I don't really understand why completely. I have my theories, but for you, for example, you're a father of, you said 9 kids, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Were these changes, these unfortunate changes for regular people like you and myself, did they push you out of the country as well, or no?
Yep. We all 100%. It was a contributing factor. If we look at where we were even 5 years ago and where we are today in Canada on those issues, and then a view to the future with the policies that they're trying to push in, where we're going to be in 5 years. Yeah, my wife and I, it's not just myself, my wife and I and our children, we just don't see a clear future anymore. Right? They were talking about the possibilities. Right now, homeschooling is legal in Canada, but they have talked about the possibilities of getting rid of that, because people like us can indoctrinate our own children, and it's contrary to what the government would like them to believe. So if they were to ever implement that, then our children would be forced into a government school where they have, they teach cross-dressing and homosexuality and all sorts of stuff. The teachers don't even have to inform the parent anymore about what's going on in the school, right? And they can push all this. They have cross-dressing story hour. So you have some hairy-chested man in a dress reading sexually explicit novels to your kindergarten students, right? So no, it was a huge part of us leaving. Yeah, multiple things, but that was part of it for sure.
I think one of the worst parts of that drag queen story hour, one of the worst videos that I've seen, is where one of those men dressed in women's clothing was shouting at the top of his lungs, "Do you want to be like me when you grow up, or do you want to be a drag king or queen when you grow up?" And all the kids were saying, "Yay!" And you see a whole bunch of woke. It's the idea of pushing your child into a group of people with a higher rate of self-deletion. I'm going to use YouTube specific words to be YouTube neutral, right? So with a higher rate of self-deletion and other problems is just insane. I mean, it's interesting that you use the word indoctrination when, when in fact it's being used against you as somebody with a nuclear family. But in a sense, if you think about it, first of all, you have to find your perfect mate, right? Then you have to try very hard to have kids. And it's a very pleasurable thing, but still you have to try. Then the woman has to, 9 months of carrying the baby, you have no idea what's going to happen. Then you put all of this time and effort into making sure that the child becomes a productive member of society in the future, and a productive member of the family. And then hopefully in the future, they will be there to support you when you're old and crippled and you're trying to live out your days, right? And the radical vocal minority, the minuscule tiny percent of the population, comes in and starts dictating how you should be raising your kids and calling you as the person who's indoctrinating your kids rather than the opposite. It's mind-blowing that it's even allowed to happen.
They're twisting all of it around, right? What's black is white, what's up is down, what's left is right. Everything is getting messed up, and I think we've seen a lot of that in the last 5 years. A lot of misinformation that they print as fact. Well, we still see it. I mean, Joe and I had an interview recently. We discussed that too. The Western media is constantly pumping negatives about Russia. When you come over here and you realize how lovely these people are, that's not what we're told about it. Everything is upside down. And you're right. You said a small fraction of the population. That's exactly what it is. I don't even know what the percentage is, but I'm guessing it's probably around 5% of the population that actually wants this stuff.
No,
right?
There's a portion of that wants it, and then there's a portion that are actually born with it, for example, because there is potentially a portion that are born this way for whatever reason. We don't need to discuss it because we have no idea. We're not scientists. But there are studies that suggest that only a portion of them are actually born that way, and everyone else is indoctrinated into it. I mean, the whole movement was based off of a very, very faulty study by John Money on two Canadian twins. Do you know what I'm talking about or no?
No, I never heard that.
Okay,
No.
well, when you have a chance, look it up, and you'll be horrified to know that this whole movement that is basically self-deleting a generation of kids in the Western world was mainly based on a study by a psychopath, in my opinion, named John Money, on two Canadian twins. One of them had an accident during birth. Anyway, I'm not going to give too much information, but read into it, and it'll really paint a clear picture of what actually has been going on and why, in my opinion. But either way, we can actually move on. What about
How long ago was that?
70s, I believe. I believe it was 70s.
Oh, a long time. Okay.
70s or 60s or something like that. It was basically two Canadian twins. One of them had an accident during birth, or when they were in the hospital, and basically a part of their body was removed accidentally, and then this psychologist or doctor in John Hopkins, he basically raised one of them as a girl, trying to prove that it's basically society that classifies you, whether you're a male or a female, rather than you being born this way. So he did that whole study, and everyone thought that it was successful because he said it was successful, and then 20 years down the line, you find out that one of the twins actually OD'd because they were doing all kinds of horrible things, and John Hopkins to them. And then the other twin, he self-deleted himself, the one who had the accident, who was born with genitalia, and then afterwards was removed. He self-deleted himself because he was like, well, all this crap was done to us, and he was like, I was raised as a girl, but I did everything as a boy. I felt like a boy because he was born like a boy. And the whole movement is based on this nutcase who conducted this child abusive study, if you can call it that. And now we're here, and now we have 20% of the new generation thinking they're part of that movement, when in fact it's just a fact.
I was trying to think of what that number was. I just recently read a report on that, and I wanted to say it was higher than 20%, but yeah, there's a lot of people that now think, and we see it when we're driving around. We see it. You go to McDonald's or Tim Hortons or some fast food place through drive-through, you now see it all over the place. and you never used to when I was young at all. So
A bit
yeah,
of
it's always in your face now, right? So
a bit of a light question. Do you miss Tim Hortons or no?
I do, yeah, I do. Actually, in Canada, I now think McDonald's coffee is better, but I miss the idea of Tim Hortons. It's always been a Canadian identity you can just roll in. And here, when we started in Georgia, I couldn't find a good coffee for the life of me. And here, I haven't tried too many places, but yeah, it's not the same coffee culture that we have back home. That's for sure.
It's not the same coffee. I mean, people would
That too.
the
Yeah.
higher class would shit on Timmy's coffee, but I actually liked it myself. So
Yep.
it was the
Yeah, we went to one restaurant and I asked for a coffee and they served me something. I think it was Turkish coffee. I could be wrong, but I could have ate it with a spoon. It was just sludge. And I'm like, what is this? Right? It was awful.
no
Yeah.
that's potentially Turkish coffee. I don't know, but Turkish coffee.
I'm
is supposed to
saving
be good
money
with
now. I
something.
just drink coffee at home and make my own. So, yeah.
No, there's a ton of good coffee places as well, but Tim Hortons had its own taste. But besides that, what else do you miss about Canada?
I mean, some family and friends, but we live in a day and an age where we can get a hold of anybody anytime. When we can do this through the internet. So, not a lot. I mean, I miss our farm. Obviously, we all do. We miss having the cows, the tractors, the chores. Just our own space, knowing what we're going to be doing tomorrow and what's ours tomorrow. Right now we're kind of in a limbo spot. We don't have a place of our own. We don't necessarily have a clear direction of where we're going or what's going to happen next, right? So I guess I miss that security of having our own, but that'll come. I mean, it's just, it takes time. So
Of course, it takes a lot of time to build up on that security, especially when you have a lot of paperwork to do because you've just settled and you have to get used to the local culture and the local laws and everything. But as far as if we can come back to Canada just for 1 second or for a couple of minutes, there is a trend. There's a trend of new immigrants who are arriving to Canada who are also moving back. This is something that I wouldn't have been able to predict. Okay, in your opinion, what is it about that? What is it about modern Canada that is basically forcing new immigrants who have come to the country thinking, "Wow, well, we've been told that it's a perfect place to live." What is forcing them back out? Is it anything to do with healthcare? Is it anything to do with rising crime rates or false expectations? What do you think is forcing them to go back?
I think there's a lot of different reasons. A good friend of mine, he's actually from Turkey. He has a daughter going through college right now. As soon as she's done, he's moving back. He came to Canada with the intent of staying there forever. But all of the above, it's not the same. So he has his own business, construction business in Toronto. He lives in Toronto. You would think there would be lots of work there. He hasn't been able to find any work for 3 weeks now. He's just sitting at home. There's nothing to do, which sounds odd because we should be building houses and should be doing a lot. But the interest rates being up, there's a lot less construction going on, a lot less renovations going on. The pickings get slimmer, I guess. He also sees the same issue. So this is where I find interesting is that the majority of our immigrants are coming from Middle Eastern countries with a Muslim or Islamic background. And they have the same values in many ways as Christians do. They don't agree with the homosexuality. They don't agree with transgenders and all the other alphabet things that go on. And they have those same things, right? And so they're coming to Canada with this picture that's been painted over the last 150 years of this wonderful place where you can have this dream, same as America. And they get here and it's not that way. It's a lot harder now to make a living. Like I mentioned earlier, it takes years to save up for a house, if you can ever save up for that down payment. He did buy a house, so he does own a house. And then, yeah, the cost of living is phenomenal. Our prices for groceries and for just regular supplies have gone way, way up in the last 5 years, as they have in a lot of places in the West, I guess, but in Canada for sure. We got carbon tax. We've got a government that is just seems to be bent on destroying the country, destroying the economy and the middle class. I think there's a lot of different factors, and I've talked to more and more people who are just they're not satisfied anymore. Right, so yeah, we're bringing in 500,000 per year or more, 500,000 to a million, but there are quite a few that are going back. And in his circle, of course, he's a Turkish man. He's from Islamic background, so his circle, he sees that as well. There's a lot of people that are going back to Turkey again.
Okay. Is there anything that you could change, for example? Any kind of policies that you would implement if you had the power or the authority to do so in Canada that could possibly change things for the better?
Does that include removing leadership?
You speak freely.
I think Trudeau would have to go. That would be number one. Him and his whole policies for sure. The liberal-minded policies have done a lot of damage. Yeah, We need to get back to conservative thinking, not necessarily conservative party. I'm not even necessarily a supporter of them, but just conservative traditional mindset where you can't spend more than you make. Right? Just common sense stuff. If you don't have the money, don't spend it. Right? And focus back on the family. I mean, these problems didn't start 5 years ago. They didn't start 10 years ago. These problems started, 20, 30, 40 years ago with the breakdown of the family, where it no longer became important anymore for a man and a woman to stay together in marriage. No longer the focus, it became a bad thing to have children all of a sudden. So we now have a population or a birth rate of, I think, is 1.5 or 1.6 in Canada.
It's
which
almost
they
the
say
same
we're
as
still
in Russia,
overpopulated.
actually.
Yeah. But here, at least, they're trying to promote larger families. I mean, it takes time for that to happen. In Canada, they're still saying we're having too many kids because we're overpopulating. We're running out of room. Which, if you've driven through northern Canada or in the prairies, I mean, there's loads and loads of room. They're saying these things, but at the same time, they're bringing in 500,000 or more immigrants because we need the workers, we need the people. Right? It doesn't, you can't have both ways. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it seems that basically what they're trying to do is the local population, which has managed to accumulate some kind of wealth, even though they're highly, what is it called? Not overcredited, but they've had taken on way too much debt. But if you break apart the family and if you break apart the local population and get them to spend as much as humanly possible and live just for themselves, not for their kids and not for the future, and then you bring in really, really cheap labor from overseas to supplement the low birth rates, and then you basically expand the country this way, and you ensure that the country exists in the future this way. So you have those people that have already been in the high positions and accumulated the wealth, at least some kind of wealth. They're spending all the money, and you're basically taking really cheap labor, you're bringing them in, probably pushing down wages, trying to restart manufacturing. I mean, I'm guessing this is something to do with what the strategy currently is, because otherwise we understand, you and I understand, that a conservative family is what holds the country together. A conservative family is what, even a conservative way of living is what's going to make us more stable and financially secure. But it's not the same in the West anymore.
And a middle class.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, if you go back 200 years ago, the whole world, I shouldn't say the whole world, but majority of the world ran with a few rich people on the top and a whole lot of poor people on the bottom. That's why everybody left Europe. They came to America for that dream. They could finally own their own piece of dirt. They weren't paying, extortionary rental rates or, threatened to kick out of their home if they couldn't, come up with the rents. They could actually own a piece of dirt and become somebody. And that large middle class, I think, is what changed the world for the last 200 years. Mm-hmm. And I partly think, I have no evidence or no papers to back that up, but part of me thinks is that those top rich guys, they want that back. They want to get rid of that middle class and just have them and everybody else down at the bottom, so they can dictate to us exactly how and what to live, right?
Well, I mean, moving forward, really interested to find out why and how. Why did you choose Russia? How did you choose Russia? How did you feel when you're like, when you told your wife and your other kids, like, hey, we're moving to this country, the country that's supposed to be the devil's lair, according to Western mainstream media? Like, how did that happen?
Well, we don't have a TV, so children have never had a bad opinion on Russia. They wouldn't have, good or bad, I guess. I've been watching Russian news for probably over 10 years. I got curious on it. I don't even remember how I first started on it, but I got curious on Russian news to see what the other side of the story was. I don't think it's good to be in an echo chamber. And our news, I find, is mostly opinion pieces in the West. It's not really news. It's not just telling you the facts of what happened. It's somebody's opinion on what happened, which I think is, I like, leave the opinion out. And I found the Russian news seemed to be less opinion piece. And I know there's people out here that are going to laugh and think that that's silly, because they probably have a bit of both. But I found it gave me more factual information, even about my own country, than our news did. And so that's where it kind of started, I guess, and looking into it more and more. Around the Olympics, we watched that here as well. I forget what year that was. That's quite a few years ago. And just more and more, we started looking into it. What's that? You
mean in 2014, the Olympics in 2014?
Yeah, I think it was right around then. They had a spectacular show. Really, the opening ceremony and stuff was amazing. So anyway, we started looking into it more and more, contacting people. I found out about some. Baby's waking up here. Hang on. What was I saying? Oh, there's South African Boers. I read a story about how a whole bunch of these Boers, because of the difficulties they're facing in South Africa, had moved to Russia. And so I started exploring, trying to figure out where these guys went, which I never did end up finding out. Maybe somebody will tell me one day. But that got me across a contact here that was trying to bring Westerners in, named Dmitry in Moscow. And so contacting through him, slowly but surely, I developed more and more contacts, and it just kind of skyrocketed from there. Hey?
It's been years coming.
Yeah, it's been years in the making. My wife's just saying it's been years coming. As far as the children, I mean, we just explained it how we saw it. We said, listen, this is what's going on here. We have land, we have a farm, we have 200 acres. It's successful, it's making money, but the prospects of us buying more land, maybe for one child would be fine, 2 children maybe, but not for all of them. And at this point, they all want to farm. So for their economic farming future, it just wasn't possible there anymore. And Russia has this vast amount of untapped resource that nobody seems to want to farm. Everybody wants to live in the city. So that was kind of a match made. And then policies, we've seen this government here making policy after policy that seem to be pro-family, pro-church, pro-tradition, versus ours, we're all the opposite direction. You know, here they're trying to curtail abortion numbers. In our country, they're trying to push the numbers up. You know, we got policies here against transgenders and homosexuality in our country. We're promoting it in every school that's around, and all these different policies back and forth. Even monetary policies, they seem to be pushing less debt here and paying off debt, versus ours is just a never-ending ATM that just keeps spitting out money. We go farther and farther in the hole. So yeah, it was just, I couldn't say one thing. It's just been something that's been building for a long time, and then we just got the strong feeling that it's something we had to do. If for our children, for their future. It was just time to do it. We decided to sell and go for it.
Okay, and I mean, what were you most surprised about when you actually landed, you arrived, and what surprised you the most?
I don't think we were surprised by anything. We had researched enough. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, are you surprised it's cold?" Well, no. I mean, you've lived in Canada. You know what's cold. I mean, go to Edmonton, right? I mean, it was minus 50 there 2 weeks ago. That's cold. We farmed in Saskatchewan. I seen minus 56 one morning on the thermometer. So now I don't think there was anything really that surprised us here. You know, we knew things were going to be frustrating. We knew things were going to, like, as far as paperwork, things were going to be slow. We knew what the weather was going to be like. Yeah, we were surprised. I guess we could say afterwards, once we landed here, we were surprised by the overwhelming generosity and support and love that the Russian people gave. And we seen that through the YouTube comments. We were just blown away reading through the comments, how many people were just so happy to invite us here and to welcome us here. Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, the internet is a very interesting place. The internet basically has a very large silent majority who basically don't give you the likes. They don't really write any comments. They watch the video, they like it, they just then go to the next one, which is, I catch myself doing that same stuff, which as a YouTuber, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be supporting every single video I watch, especially if I like it. Then there's always, obviously, that very vocal a minority. They do the comments, they like your video, they support you, they share. And then there's an even more vocal negative minority. Extremely vocal. The internet on its own it's just a very toxic place where people think that their anonymity allows them to be absolute bastards, if you want to call it that. So, I mean, don't be surprised if you get those comments your way sooner or later.
So, but even there, though, we've had a few of those, and then I always feel like engaging and okay, I got to argue my point here. But then I look underneath it, and there's 10 Russians that already did it for me, right? And I have to translate each comment because I don't know what they're saying. But then, I mean, they've defended me perfectly and you know, slammed this guy back to his keyboard, I guess. So, yeah.
What about? I mean, we have a lot of different nationalities living in Russia. Definitely over 100. There's a lot of different languages. Obviously, Russian being the main language that everyone speaks with each other, uses to speak with each other. Your family sooner or later will have to actually learn or begin to learn Russian. Has that happened yet? Do you expect to start getting lessons somewhere, or in general, how's that going for you? Because it's an entirely different alphabet and different language.
Yeah, we homeschool our children. As part of the homeschooling, we already started the alphabet back in Canada. Mm-hmm. It's pretty tough to learn to speak. I think it's best to be immersed in it, and that's what I'm finding now. It's much easier to learn the language. So it's hard to do that in Canada when you don't know any other Russians around you, and you're asking a Canadian to teach another Canadian how to speak Russian. It just doesn't work that well. Since we're here, though, we have started lessons. A couple of our children get lessons every other day through the internet. I'm going to be hopefully enrolling in the linguistic school here and learning as well. Yeah, it's definitely something, and we're practicing. I mean, we know some phrases, some words. There's people around here that we communicate with, that our children play with outside, and yeah, just kind of keep growing in that. But that's going to be our biggest hindrance, I think, being here. Everything else is more or less the same. Obviously, there's some cultural differences. There's some customary things that are different. Business is a little different, or the regulations are a little different. But those are all things that you can get through. That's not that complicated. It's the language barrier that's going to be the biggest hindrance to successfully operating a business or just functioning in society.
Well, that, and you have to learn to take off your shoes when you enter somebody's house. That's a very big cultural difference between North America and Russia.
We already take our shoes off, so.
At least in Alberta, you did that as well. I mean, you're on the farmland. Obviously, when you're farming, that's completely understandable. But, I mean, this is something that I swear, even when we watch movies with my wife and we see in the movies some American kid or some Canadian kid walking up to his bedroom and jumping onto his bed with his shoes on, and I'm thinking, God damn, take them off. Come on, it's incredible.
We would never do that. No, my mother wouldn't allow us to walk in the house with shoes. My wife wouldn't allow the kids to walk in the house with shoes, so. That doesn't mean the odd one doesn't sneak by, but no, it's as a rule we don't do that either. So.
Okay, all right. What about, for example, any kind of issues with legalizing yourself? I mean, did you find that to be hard, extremely difficult, easy? I mean, if you're facing any kind of trouble anywhere in particular, perhaps voicing it will help, will get someone to actually help you ensure that you can get that particular piece of paperwork or that barrier accomplished or overcome, for example.
Right. Well, I've been told constantly that it's going to be a big barrier. We were communicating with John Hare. You know John Hare, the Australians there in Altai?
Yep.
He's been here for 5 years and dealing with obviously all the things that we're going to be facing. So I've already was quite prepared on what was going to happen. We're working with Timur, immigration lawyer out of Moscow, and he's handling a lot of that stuff behind the scenes. And that one of the reasons we came to Nizhniy here is because they had offered to help us with immigration quota and all the other necessary paperwork that's going to come our way. So far we haven't hit too many roadblocks. Things have been working as they should. There was a minor issue with registering the children, but that was resolved within 12 hours. And yeah, the next steps here is going to be getting our quota paperwork figured out or finalized, and then applying for temporary residency. So.
Well, good luck with that. Honestly, my wife, she is Russian now, but her nationality is Bulgarian. She was born in Bulgaria, so okay. Our daughter has Russian citizenship. I have Russian citizenship, and it was extremely difficult to get her paperwork in order because of all the different types of certificates that we needed to be translated properly. Either way, it's a very tough thing to do. It used to be even tougher like 5-6 years ago. So I wish you the best of luck in getting it accomplished. But it is most likely.
Yeah, it's our hope that it'll get easier. That people like us can use, whether it's this platform or some other one, to bring awareness to the fact that, hey, if you guys want Westerners to come and develop farmland or whatever it is, you got to make some of the stuff a little simpler. Even having one office where it takes care of everything here. I found it kind of frustrating. You need a passport, of course, to travel, but then I needed an invitation in order to get a visa to come here. And then you can't travel on just the passport and the visa. No, then you need a registration card, and then you needed to be registered. And there's just a lot of different things that all have to be sorted out. Moving to Georgia or going on a holiday to Georgia, I literally needed a passport. I showed up at the airport, they stamped it, and you're good for 365 days. It's a lot simpler. Yeah.
Yeah, that could completely understand. But then, geopolitics comes into play, and our government obviously has to, even though this might sound bad to some people, but our government must protect itself and protect the people, just like the Canadian government must do the same. And it's basically one of the major roles of every government is to protect itself and to protect its citizens from any potential harm that comes from the outside. But what, besides the language, forget the language, forget the barriers, like, what is one of the hardest things for you to get used to? Maybe culturally, maybe it's something that we Russians do. I'm not talking about the lack of Tim Hortons either, okay? So this is something entirely different. Is there something that is actually hard to get used to?
I can't think of anything right now. We were told Russians don't smile, but I don't find that's true either, because there's lots of people that smile out here. So, No, I can't think of anything right now that's
Well,
posing a well, yeah, my wife's just living in the city, but I mean that's only a temporary thing. That's not. I don't think that'd be any different for me than living in a Canadian city. I just don't care for cities that much. But
okay.
no, I don't. I haven't hit anything yet at this point.
Well, I mean, regarding the smiling, we have a saying, "Смех без причины признак дурачины," which means laughing without a reason is a sign of, I guess, stupidity, if you want to call it, or foolishness, stupidity, something like that. And I guess that extends into randomly smiling. I mean, there is a big cultural difference where, I mean, I remember whether it was in Canada or in Western Europe, there is there's a need to be as smiley as possible. Which, I mean, I know I tend to enjoy when people actually show their real feelings, whether they're positive, negative, or neutral. But when I constantly see somebody who's working behind the register at Tim Hortons or at Starbucks and something, I know the pain they're going through, and they turn around and they have a smile that goes ear to ear. I'm thinking, that's not you. That's some kind of bot. That's fake. That's not real. But you know, in Russia it's the opposite. Everyone is a little bit stoic, and then afterwards, when you get to know them, they're warm and they open up to you. Did you find that to be the case or no?
More real, yeah. Well, I haven't found that many people that were stoic, I guess. I mean, all in all, we really feel like everybody. Maybe it's because we have so many children. I have no idea, but I found Russian people to be very friendly and smiling.
Because you walk around with your 9 kids, and everyone obviously sees you, and they're like, "Wow, look at that guy! Look at that."
Yeah,
family."
I mean, they seem to love children around here. So
Yeah, did you
especially
actually?
the older people.
Yeah, did you notice a difference of how in Canada and in Russia, how the general public not only views children but interacts with children, and how here there are lots of children's playgrounds and children's area in restaurants, bars, etc., etc. Not bars, restaurants in bars.
Starting them young, right?
Yeah, in restaurants, in government buildings, and banks. I mean, did you find that surprising at all? Did you notice that or no?
I just started noticing that. I was actually at a registration office there for I'm going to mess that up, Yagaslugi or something. Or
Gososlugi.
anyway, there you go, Gusaslugi. But yeah, they had a children's play area in there, and I've seen that a few other places as well. So that's something we definitely don't have. I find children are almost more of a burden in the West. It's it's something people have when they're 40 because, well, I mean, you might as well have at least one. But it's not primary focus of life. And the parks we've noticed here as well. So Georgia's same thing. Maybe it's they used to be similar countries, I guess, part of the Soviet Union. But there's a lot of parks there as well. Great big areas for families to walk and to spend time and play on things. We don't have that, at least not that I'm aware of. Right, the park we lived in a small area, but in our town, I mean, it was a pretty dilapidated park. Mm-hmm. Sorry for anybody from Manitoulin that might watch this, but yeah, there seems to be more of a focus on family here. The odd part is that the family sizes are really small here still. Like, people seem to value family, people seem to really love kids, but there's still not that many people having large families. You said it was 1.5 here as well, same as back in Canada?
1.5 or 1.6. Now, this is like 2020 statistics, and the unfortunate part is that we were also hit. We also have that a seed of propaganda, if you want to call it, that, being child-free is a good thing. Instead of childless. That term I prefer because it's actually a punitive term, whereas child-free is basically someone coping with the fact that they have no children, in my opinion. I mean, this is but either way, there is still that seed of feminism and alphabet propaganda and everything, and the seed where you have to live for yourself and not live for the future of your family and the future for the country. That exists here. The government and other types of organizations are actively fighting against it, but it's like, you chop off the head of one of those organizations and then 2 more heads pop up somewhere else. Yeah. So it's an ongoing and constant battle, and not to mention that Russia went through a very, very dangerous for any country or any civilization period in the 90s that completely threw everything, not everything and not completely, but threw a lot of things out of the window, really messed things up. And it will take a long time to climb out of that whole situation that is still technically, we're still feeling the effects from it. It's basically a society that's completely crumbling and falling apart. So hopefully in the future that percentage, that rate will rise above 2.1 needed to sustain a civilization. But at this point in time, it's still like you either see families with no kids or you see families with like 2 or 3 kids. There seems to be, at least visually, that's what I'm seeing. I don't know what the statistics are like, but you're correct in it that there's still a lot of families without kids just yet. There's also Russia's, because we're part of the European continent. We've been engaged in lots of different kinds of wars, basically, whether because of what we did or because of something that somebody else did. That doesn't matter at this point. It's just we have generations of men that are gone forever, and that also has an effect on the birth rate as well. So there are a lot of factors, and hopefully in the future we'll manage to get that birth rate above the needed 2.1 to be able to sustain our culture. So we'll
at least there is a plan here and a vision to do that, right? Where I can't think of any Western nation that has come to the table and said, "Hey, we got to do something about this."
Maybe Hungary, maybe Poland. That's the other two that come to mind. They seem to be a little bit more resistant to.
Well, I guess I call them Eastern Europe. I guess, but
they are.
They're more conservative as well, right? So
correct. Well, in this case, I mean, in your opinion, you said you didn't have a TV, but still. In your opinion, I mean, for any English speaker that's going to be listening to this, do you feel that Russians are an oppressed people living under a brutal dictatorship? This is something that Western media pumps out constantly. I mean, is this what you feel like and what you see, or is it something else entirely?
No, I don't see that at all. No, and then people will probably just say I'm another government paid. I've been accused of that a few times now. The government's paying me to say all these nice things. So I don't know when I get my check. Maybe somebody can inform me on that one. But no, we don't see that at all. People here are free to make their own decisions, same as they are back home.
Okay.
It's no different. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, every government's going to have ups and downs and problems. I see that here. I see that there. There's things that could be improved. There's things that are good. Things that should be, maybe left alone. That's normal stuff. But a view to the future here, I don't see oppression. I see people that have an opportunity to do something in a nation that's just about ready to just take off.
Well, I'd like to formally congratulate you and invite you to the club of the would-be government propagandists who get paid millions and millions of, choose your currency. None of us ever see it, but obviously somehow we end up being paid to say all these nice things. So I want to welcome you personally to the club.
To the club, all right.
To the
well,
club
thank you very much. Thank you.
Of those who apparently get paid. All right, well, here's an interesting question. Where does Canada surpass Russia? In what aspects? It could be service, banking, it could be infrastructure, etc. And in what aspects does Russia surpass Canada? I mean, in your opinion.
Honestly, I haven't been here very long. You do realize that, right? It's been about 3 weeks. So.
Oh, it's only been 3 weeks. I thought it was more. I thought it was at least 3-4 months.
No, we've been here 3 weeks. So I can't really form expert opinions. I think infrastructure-wise, like farming-wise, from what I've seen, I'm going to stick with farming then. I think we are way ahead. There's more market opportunities. There's more connections between cooperatives, farmers, slaughterhouses, stores, whatever it may be. So there's a more clear path. And for us, if I was to go there, I would know, hey, if I'm going to milk cows, this is where my milk's going to go, and it's a guaranteed thing. If I'm going to raise pigs, I know I got to call these guys, and my pigs will be picked up. And it seems to me there's a better infrastructure there for that. Doesn't mean it's profitable, but the infrastructure is there. And here, from what I'm learning so far, I'm going to have to develop those markets myself. They're not clearly laid out. They're not available. And I think that's something that can be improved upon. That's an agricultural thing that doesn't affect everybody. I understand that. But
I think it does. I think it affects everyone. I mean,
as far as needing food, yes.
Yeah, I mean, look at what the farmers are doing in Europe.
Grocery store, there's no empty shelves. So in that sense, it's not affecting anybody whether I can get my pig to market or not. Some pigs getting to market because there's loads of pork in the shelf. There's no shortage, right? So.
Okay, so your shelves are full as well. It's not just some Potemkin, as they like to call it, village where it's one store, everything is full, and everyone else is dirt poor and they can't get their food, and all the shelves are empty, et cetera, et cetera.
That's part of being paid by the government to do these videos. They make sure that the grocery stores close to our homes are always stocked and full. Yeah.
Well, Your level of sarcasm definitely does belong in this country, and it'll
Does it?
definitely find its home. That's for sure. This is something that we like to do here as well. I mean, just like in other places. All right, but is there anything else in particular that you would actually? I mean, you've been here only 3 weeks, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, I didn't know that. I thought it was a little bit longer. But in your 3 weeks here, is there anything else that you could see that you could improve on? I mean, right now you mentioned farming. In farming, that in Canada the infrastructure is already there. You know who's doing what, why, and where. But here you have to build it all from the ground up, at least in your opinion. Is there anything else that you would change or you could change? You can avoid this question altogether. I mean, 3 weeks is not really enough time to realize anything at all.
I'm not an expert, no, at all. I think, yeah, I don't know. We came here with the thought pattern that we need to breathe life into the community, into the village, not just into the city, but bring people back to the country. So that's something that I think needs to be done. And where we're from, we have a much more vibrant rural community. There's a lot of little farms, a lot of people that are making it. They don't all necessarily make a living on the farm, but they're out there growing some food and doing something, and they value being out of the city. And here it seems to be again that the focus is more on living in the city, and people don't want to be out there. And so I think that's something that needs to be worked on to encourage people to go back out and grow food. You know, we've seen that through COVID time. All of a sudden, the shelves are empty. People that we knew that used to say, "Oh, I don't need to grow a garden. I can go to the store." Suddenly, we're thinking about buying some seeds and thought, "Hey, maybe I should learn how to grow, you know, at least a head of cabbage or something," and to connect that idea with people again. And I think I see the same thing here. People are not. Maybe in their Daksha communities, again, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but vast majority of people there, I don't think grow any food. They just get it from the store. So that's something that I think the government really needs to work on. I think they realize that. But to get, you know, they had that program where people, Russian citizens, I think, could get 1 hectare in the Far East. They're trying to encourage people to realize that and do that. But yeah, I haven't been here very long. So maybe
Okay.
ask me again sometime in 6 months or a year.
No, that would be interesting if you ever get a chance to travel to Moscow, or you're in Nizhniy Novgorod, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct.
My wife and I have been there. We actually really liked the city. It was one of those cities that we liked it. For some reason, we liked it more than Kazan. So maybe one time we'll stop by there as well. But now, I mean, we've already been talking for about 46 minutes. I'd like to come to the my most favorite part of of any interview that I do. It's basically an open mic where you can say whatever you want. Could be positive, negative, could be a wish, your goals. You could say hi to your parents. I don't care. It's your open mic. Say as you want, how you wish. Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that one, I guess.
That's
my
the
wish.
goal. That's the goal. Nobody's supposed to be prepared for it.
Nobody's supposed to be prepared. My wish is what a friend of mine keeps joking around is going to happen is that we're going to get handed citizenship, because that would simplify a lot of things. So there's my wish, is that that'll happen. I don't think that's realistic. We're going to have to work hard like everybody else and get there. But if somebody that's powerful is listening, I would accept it. That would be handy. Other than that, I don't know. We're hoping to be productive members of society here, and work with Russian people, work with the government, work with the locals to build community, build jobs, do stuff, and hopefully one day we can show that through YouTube and give back to the country that's giving us the freedom and the future that we've been looking for. You know, we're hoping to build on a farm that people can come to as well. We can educate folks and give back in that way. Yeah. I don't have a whole lot to talk about.
No,
I got some questions for you, I guess, but I'll save that for the next interview.
Yeah. But otherwise, no, that's a very good open mic. I mean, everyone has their own thing that they concentrate on. So it's good to hear that people like yourself, large families, are interested. They're inquiring about ways to move, ways to contribute to society. We need positive people like that. I mean, any society needs positive people like that, and any society needs people to that can actually contribute something to ensure the future survival of generations, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to thank you for the interview, and I thank you for your time. And I'd like to thank everyone who's finished watching this interview. Like, subscribe, put your comments, call us government agents like some of you do. Always brings a smile to my face. So thank you again. Share this content, and I entirely forget how to sign off in English, but it's been a Russian opinion. There we go. And Arend, he's a Canadian who, with his family, has moved to Russia and has been living in Nizhniy Novgorod for the past 3 weeks, looking to develop his own farm, etc., etc., etc. Thank you, Arend, for being part of my channel and giving me the interview.
Спасибо.
Пожалуйста.